614 Startups Nation, welcome to another episode of the 614 Startups Podcast. My name is Elio Harmon, your host, and hey, this is my favorite seat in the whole world because I get to have great conversations with great people, business people, investors, entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, etc. And today I have a very special guest, Kristy Campbell of Rev1 Ventures. Kristy, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here, Elio. Good to see you.
Yeah, so can you believe this show is like in year number 5 and this is finally the time that you come on? It's been far too long. I've been wanting to have this conversation for some time.
I can't believe it. You've come so far. I'm just thrilled to be here, and I'm just thankful that you're thinking of me and want to hear what I have to talk about.
Awesome. All right. Well, I have some notes here because you sent me some stuff to discuss, and we have some very exciting things to get into. But first, people got to get to know you, right? I know you're a name about town, right? Your name rings bells, but let's get to know Kristy Campbell a little bit. So share a little bit of your personal and professional background and how you came to work with Rev1.
Sure. So I've been working at Rev1 for 7 years, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But before my career trajectory that landed me here, I spent the majority of my career working in startups. So mostly tech-based startups, mostly software, data integration firms. A lot of those firms were venture-backed. And so I basically spent my career helping early stage companies to grow, build their teams, operate the business, build products. I worked in customer service, a lot of time spent in marketing, but about 8-10 companies. So there was a lot of time spent there. I grew up in Mid-Ohio and have spent my entire career here. I have worked for a few companies that had West Coast operations and did get to spend some time going back and forth there. But it's been a real joy to be able to take that passion for working within those startups and to be able to now apply it to Rev1.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so what attracted you to Rev1? What was it about the mission of Rev1 as you kind of were deciding about the next step in your career that made you wanted to work with this organization?
Yeah, well, I really happened upon it. So I'd actually just come off working for a large tech startup in the community at the time called a company called Manta. Some folks might remember it. It's still around to this day and still one of the most highly trafficked sites for small business in the US, but had spent quite a bit of time there and learned a lot and built a lot of good product and good marketing work there. But coming off of that and the growth of that company, I frankly didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just did a little exploring, talked to some corporates, I talked to some other startups, and I did a little bit of consulting for a while as I was trying to figure it out. But then I was connected by the former CEO of Manta, Pam Springer, to the CEO of Rev1, to Tom Walker. And frankly, I had never heard of Rev1 or the previous organization in Columbus. And so I was just kind of blown away that there was an organization that was set up just to do this work. And I remember thinking to myself, and looking at all the startups that I worked for, I wish that we would have had these services, these advisors, these connections in the community, because I really would have benefited from them and the companies that I worked with. So that's how I was connected, and have been here since early 2015, starting my 8th year.
Yeah. Now, as familiar as the name is, the model may be unfamiliar to some people, right? They know what Rev1 is. And like you said, when you got in and you saw what the organization did, you couldn't believe, right, that, hey, I wish I had something like this when I was working for these companies. But a lot of entrepreneurs out there might know the name Rev1, but they might not know the model and the mission of Rev1. So why don't you share a little bit about the history, like how Rev1 came to be and what your mission is in terms of serving entrepreneurs in Central Ohio?
Sure. And maybe I'll start with just sort of why organizations like ours exist, because I think that really is the background on why Rev1 was formed and why our CEO was recruited here. But, fundamentally, communities that have active startup ecosystems they thrive, they generate jobs at 50% higher rate. And there's all this great dynamicism that also comes from it: talent attraction, corporate connections, capital growth, wealth in the region, high paying jobs. And so the list goes on. You know this because you're also in this business. But So because of that, regions that are looking to build thriving startup ecosystems really want to do it in a meaningful way. And so they usually look to a model that combines some level of very strategic services alongside capital. And that's very well known in research circles like the Kauffman Foundation, that if you combine those two together, you're going to have the ability to improve the outcomes for startups. So tech-enabled high-growth startups are very risky business, and they have a very big challenge in their first 5 years. So the majority of them, around 65%, just don't make it out alive, right? So only 35% survive those first 5 years. And so the ability to come in and create a vehicle or a platform and programs that can help startups get access to the services and capital they need is really why communities bring this in. So we are one of about 70-ish organizations in the US called venture development organizations. The reason most folks in the region don't know of Rev1 is because there's only one of us in Columbus and about 5 or 6 of us in the state. So that is what we do and why we do it. And so our CEO was recruited here to Columbus just a few years before I joined in about 2012. And his mission that he was given by a lot of the leaders in the community was to help to foster and catalyze a dynamic and growing startup ecosystem. And there was a lot of goodness that already existed. A lot of great entrepreneurs, innovation, spin-outs happening from research institutions, and even some organized capital, but it wasn't happening at scale. And so that was really the mission of Rev1, is to be able to bring more organized capital, especially at the earliest stage, and then pair that with advisory services.
All right, awesome. I'm a beneficiary of Rev1 in more ways than one. We can get into that a little bit later, but I appreciate the fact that you kind of laid out what the organization is about, how you're structured, et cetera. So let's jump into results, right? So as an organization, you get formed and you have a particular objective, a goal, a mission, right, that you're set out to accomplish. What are some of the key metrics for Rev1 when you guys look at performance year over year? Is it capital deployed? Is it return on investment? Is it jobs? Is it a combination of all of those things? How are you measuring success at Rev1?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And this is something that we talk to about our entrepreneurs who come through our first entry point, which is Customer Learning Lab, because I think it's important not only for entrepreneurs to look for what their outcome is trying to be, but also to understand in their partner what they're trying to achieve. For us, it's all about the success of the clients that we work with. And that's primarily around their ability to go to market and generate revenue, to attract capital so that they can then build the business, to create jobs and good jobs, high paying jobs, and to be able to build diverse teams. So that's something that is very important to us. We know that companies with diverse teams and leadership are going to be more successful. And so that's a key metric for us as well.
Yeah, heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? Because you guys are so rightly positioned. You have access to these resources. And so the community is always looking to Rev1 for saying, hey, what have you done for me lately? But we're going to talk about what have you done for me lately after we come back from this commercial break. You're listening to my interview with Kristy Campbell of Rev1. We'll be right back. Support for 614 Startups comes from Color Coded Labs. It's time for a better career in tech. Introducing Color Coded Labs, a 16-week boot camp that does more than just teach basic code. It's a program designed to help you actually get a career in tech. At Color Coded Labs, we've removed all the barriers to help you learn the skills you need to start a career you love in weeks, not years. All designed for people of color by people of color. Apply now at colorcodedlabs.com. Nation, thank you so much for staying with us. I'm continuing my conversation with Kristy Campbell of Rev1. All right, now, what have you done for me lately, right? You guys came out with this report, the state of startups in Ohio, right, reflecting on what happened over the last year. And some of the data I saw went back, right? Some of these consistent wins. And that's one thing about startups. It's not about the one time, is can you put great years together? So what were some of the highlights for from the report that you can share with us?
Yeah, well, thanks for calling this out. We're so proud of this report. We just launched it last Friday, and this was a report that we did in partnership with the other venture development organizations in the state. You may have heard of some of them. So Jumpstart and Tech Growth, Cincy Tech, Entrepreneur Center. And really, we just wanted to be able to not just highlight the impact of the companies that are doing great work here in the state, but also to be able to call out the importance of having this strong foundational platform that we've all created to be able to support entrepreneurs. So a couple of the highlights that we launched along with the report. I think most folks know this, that last year marked another milestone year, the third consecutive year that Ohio companies raised over $1 billion in venture capital. So that was one of the key highlights, but also just looking more broadly at the ecosystem and what the companies we've worked with have been able to achieve. So nearly 11,000 jobs, 167 companies funded, and those companies have created over a $10 billion impact on the state.
Yeah, so 11,000 jobs, right? I think sometimes we lose touch with numbers, right? You hear like the debt number for the country. It's like a number that's too big to quantify, right?
Which is at a new record, I
can't
hear.
wrap my mind around it, right? So I want to break it down. Let's make some of this real, right? When you're talking about 11,000 jobs, is there a way to put it in context where people just don't blow past that stat, like, oh, 11,000 jobs, whatever? Because you're not only talking about a job number, you're talking about a type of job, right? That represents the future job market, higher paying jobs that are creating a middle class here in Central Ohio. So how do we kind of really wrap our minds around when you say you created, or the companies that you've partnered with created 11,000 jobs? How can we wrap our minds around that?
Yeah, so I can just use our slice of the world here in Central Ohio as an example. So when we start working with an organization, they're typically really early and where there may only be a founder and a co-founder. And so there aren't a lot of jobs, right? And oftentimes they're not even paying themselves because they're just developing the concept, trying to find the product that will meet the market need and going to market. So fast forward to then the work that's done with these companies, whether it be through our advisory or connections to others, that is when they start to get the ability to grow their product, generate revenue. And when they start to bring in capital, that's when they're able to add jobs, right? Jobs that are helping them to build out the product, to build out customer service, to be able to go out and bring in new customers and manage those customers. So think about all the aspects of a business that you need to build out a team around. Those are the types of jobs that these companies are creating. And because they're in the tech industry, they're really well-paying jobs. So just looking at the clients that we've supported, the average wage for a job across our clients is $93,000 a year.
Wow. That's amazing. And you're preaching to the choir about building a company and not paying yourself. Listen, we're going to change that in 2022 for me.
That would be
Okay,
great.
We got to get to that point where I'm getting paid. But hey, if money is why you do it, it's one of the things that they talk about in startups. You have to be solving a problem that you're very excited about. And the problem that we're solving here at 614 Startups, where I think our values are aligned with Rev1, is all about building community, right? I know that's a big part of what you're thinking about in your role and how Rev1 can continue to facilitate and build startup community here in Central Ohio. So what are your thoughts, right, about the startup community as it is? And what are some things that we're doing right, well, and what are some things we can do better to achieve your ultimate vision as you see it?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think the startup community or the startup ecosystem, depending on the term they use in Columbus, is doing really well. I think the ecosystem is better connected than it's ever been. I think you're seeing the fruit of that in that there are more businesses being started, more businesses growing, especially high growth businesses. Columbus ranks really high, especially the Columbus Metro in the Midwest for those high growth businesses. But we can always do more. I think the big opportunities continue to lie around how can we create talent pipelines, so talent that is focused on entrepreneurship as a career path and that has training and background in STEM and tech. I think as you see all these companies growing and you look at their jobs boards, and we have a jobs board that always has 75 to 100 positions on it, that gap continues to grow in the talent. So I think we need to continue to focus on creating a talent pipeline. Another area that I think we all want to continue to do better at is finding ways to foster and support entrepreneurship from women and entrepreneurs of color. So as you probably know, they're both starting businesses at a higher rate, but those businesses are not generating sales or customers at the same rate as other businesses. And so if we want to be able to continue developing and having strong economic development impact in the Columbus region, we need to find a way to tap into those businesses that are being created at a higher rate, but maybe aren't being able to scale as successfully. So those are probably two of the most prominent areas that we think about most deeply.
Yeah, I mean, and these, I'm going to call them problems, have existed for a long time. And if they were easy to solve, maybe somebody would have solved them by now. But I think we have, like you said, a community here in Columbus, Ohio, that if we pool our resources and we really commit to these things, I think we could really put a dent in a lot of these issues. So for me, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is the experience when a company does engage with Rev1, right? So what are some things that you're looking for? Not talking about the investment side, but generally, if somebody's out there building a company and they want to access resources that might be available at Rev1, what are you guys looking for? And then what can somebody expect? What's the process generally for engaging with Rev1?
Thank you. I really appreciate you calling this out because I think this is the area that is the most confusing to folks and the area that we wish folks understood best because again, we're here for the community. So the key thing that we're looking for is an entrepreneur that's passionate and focused about the customer's problem that they're trying to solve, right? So they understand that there's a problem in the market and they understand that the customer has a need and they're trying to develop a product that will solve that customer's need. So that is the fundamental thing that we're looking for. It doesn't matter what the entrepreneur looks like, what background they come from, how much money they have. If they have passion for solving a real problem in the market, we want to talk to them. And so we get, I think you know this, we get about 1,000 inquiries a year from entrepreneurs across the community. And so really the job at that early stage is to figure out quickly and understand what those entrepreneurs are building, why they're building it, what their background is, experience. If they don't have experience, how are they planning to fill that gap? But the number one thing we want to know early on is, are they solving a need in their market? And so when they reach out to us, we have a first conversation. We try to determine what I just described. And if they are, building a product in one of the key industries that are tech enabled and high growth, we have a conversation, we get that background on them. And the first thing that we do, if they're interested, is invite them to attend a 3-day entrepreneur boot camp that happens over the course of 2 weeks. It's called Customer Learning Lab. I know you've been through that. And I would be interested to hear your feedback on this conversation. But the whole focus of that 3 days is for the entrepreneur to be able to dig deep into their market, understand how big it is, how they're going to tackle it, and if their product that they're envisioning is going to be really a product that can combine with that market need and build a business around it.
Oh yeah, I'll give you my opinion right now. No, we'll have to take a break, folks. You're going to have to stick with us until after this commercial break. Then I'll give you my feedback on Customer Learning Lab. Continuing my conversation with Kristy Campbell of Rev1. We'll be right back after these messages. All right, guys, let's all be honest with ourselves. How many times have you needed to get an oil change, clean your car, or get a tire rotation, and you've put it off for weeks on end? We're all guilty of it. My friends over at Vont set out to make delayed car care a thing of the past and created the most convenient and affordable way to care for your car. All you have to do is 1, book your service and desired pickup location. 2, drop your keys with a certified Vont driver who picks up your car for you. And 3, your car will be serviced and delivered back to you within 3 hours. From now on, the only thing you have to worry about is where you're going and who you're going with. Look, guys, I'm telling you, this is the future. Try out Vont, VOHNT.com, and use promo code 614 startups for 20% off. All right, and we're back. All right, I know that was a cliffhanger. All right, so let me break it down, my experience at Customer Learning Lab. All right, so one of the things that entrepreneurs, your idea sounds great in your head, but you need to go and validate it. And for me, that was what I walked away from Customer Learning Lab understanding much better. You need to understand the problem that you're solving. You need to understand your customer. You need to be able to articulate and execute on a very elegant business model, right? And it really had me questioning, even if it, that short period of time with the rigor that is a component of the program, really questioning if 614 Startups was the company I wanted to build. And the only reason I think that ever crept into my mind is because I envisioned building something other than what I needed to build, right? I had this, kind of how people talk about what entrepreneurship is supposed to be, right? Versus what entrepreneurship is for the problem that you're solving. I think, going through that process really helped me clarify what I was building. And when I came away from it, I had an opportunity to really sit down and reflect on the process. It made me a much stronger entrepreneur. What is the feedback that you typically get? And then you can kind of continue that process from people once they go through that process, right? 1,000 people come in the funnel, they go through Customer Learning Lab, 2 people come out the other side. What are you finding, and what's the rest of the process look like for engaging with Rev1?
Yes. Well, thanks for that feedback. We do get a lot of that similar feedback that folks just really, it gave them the time to focus on the business. They're so busy building the business that sometimes they don't get time to focus on it. So Customer Learning Lab is oftentimes the next step for folks who are still validating their market. About 120 businesses will come through that each year, and about a third of those then move on and have the opportunity to become clients. So anywhere from 35 to 45 companies have enough sort of there that they're able to really take advantage of the broader set of services. And those are the folks who become clients of the Startup Studio. And that's really where the work begins. I know most folks know of Customer Learning Lab because more people have had interactions with that. But when they become clients, it's basically them agreeing, hey, I'm going to roll up my sleeves, spend my time focused on this business. And it's Rev1 saying, we're going to roll up our sleeves and spend our time with you, helping you to realize your vision. And so when that happens, we sign a very simple agreement together, and we agree to come up with what are the next 2 or 3 milestones that entrepreneur or founding team needs to achieve in the next 6 months to be able to grow their business. If they're coming in at the very early stage, where most of them do, it's a concept, it's an idea, maybe it's a first iteration of a product. So for them, it's really about how do they validate that the product that they have or that they want to put in the market is what the market wants? It's taking that Customer Learning Lab one step further, and it's getting a beta product, getting it in front of customers, getting feedback, tweaking it, figuring out how do I generate revenue from that first product. If they're a little further along and they're already generating revenue, for them, it's usually more about how do I expand my market? How do I sell to more customers? Or how do I build a team that can allow me as the founder to then go expand the product and build more customer base? So those are just examples of the things that we work on together. Through that work together, that includes our ability to sort of connect them up to mentors who have deeper experience in certain areas, whether that be understanding of their industry, whether that be helping them to raise a round of funding. We open them up to vetted services partners. So folks, think legal, accounting, HR, folks who can help them do everything from form the business, help them hire talent, help them to be able to protect their IP, market the business. So those are some of the types of things that we do as we start to engage with a client. And so every year we have clients who continue to grow and build their business, and we have clients who fall out because they stalled and things just weren't able to progress, or they weren't able to validate the next step.
Yeah. Now, so I'm always looking through Rev1's website and your blog for content, right? And I came across this article. It's like the 5 mistakes founders or entrepreneurs make. And the entire thing was all about signing agreements that you don't understand. All right. So we went through the whole process, and you said you got to sign something. All right. So In terms of the agreement, right, is there any cost to be part of the startup studio? And I mean, we're not going to go into the fine print of the agreement, but are they somehow locking themselves into like, you have to take your first round of funding from Rev1, anything like that? I know that's not the side of the business you're on, but I just got to put that out there in case that's a question in the mind of the audience.
No, that's a really great question. We are a nonprofit. There is no cost to becoming a client. So that agreement that I mentioned is really just us formally handshaking that we're going to work on this thing together. And when you think about that, I've probably failed to mention earlier and should have, the way that we're funded as a venture development organization, we are a true public-private partnership. So we do what we do because corporate community, public-private sector come to the table to fund the nonprofit. And then we have the opportunity to have support then from the state through the Ohio Third Frontier program to match some of that funding. And so part of that handshake agreement on paper is that they're being reminded that they're being supported through funding from the Ohio Third Frontier. And so that's really what it